Right on, brother.
Thanks for your support of the Palestinian cause. We really appreciate it.
My honor, my blessing. I am Palestinian. I claim that with pride. I'm also Hawaiian. I don't have any Hawaiian blood and I have no Palestinian blood, but I am Hawaiian, I am Palestinian. Justice is justice. If I had the blood, I know what I would want. That is my fucking commitment. And I firmly believe there will be justice. Honestly. Thank you. What a tough job I've got. Cheers. I'm in a little bit of a, I'm enjoying, I was in Acapulco. This is like a party town, man. It's just fun. Been drinking and smoking and being stupid, but I go through these phases and then I get healthy again. So forgive me anyway. This is like air for Irish people anyway, so I have to thank Nalise again and Ted and everyone who's organized. I really don't like organizing things, and it's a real stressful, you never know how many people are going to show up, and it's always really stressful, a lot of work, and a largely thankless job. So Nalise and Ted and everyone else who's worked on this, thank you so very, very much. And thank you to everyone here. It's a great, great blessing. I was speaking to somebody earlier about what it's like to just be who you are, really be who you are, say what you feel, not in any way compromise your integrity, to express yourself and not be in any way really concerned about what the consequences are. This is not normal. This is not something that most people understand. I've walked this way for quite some time for whatever reason, and what it feels like to be truly free, and the only way to be truly free, in my opinion, is to not be wrapped up in the material, the physical. In the material and the physical, all you really have is your life. You'll do anything to preserve your life. It's the be-all, end-all. So, from the atheist perspective, all you have is the physical life. And once that's done, that's it. End of story. Over. I'm not one of those people. I'm not a religious person, but I'm a spiritual person. I understand that the man that people see as Ken O'Keefe is actually a spirit, a soul. I've been through many other experiences and however many manifestations of life and whatever vessels I lived in. There is a certain sort of experience that comes with the spirit, the soul that inhabits this body right now. And I think part of the success of the powers that be is that they've done everything to disconnect us from that past. Because when you reconnect with that past, you start to become really genuinely, deeply empathetic. Because you've been through that stuff before. You don't need in your current life to experience the tragedy of having a loved one ripped away from you through violence or whatnot. You've already been there. You've done that. And you remember how painful that was. So you feel genuine empathy towards those that are experiencing this type of thing, and it compels you to do what you can to try and help and prevent these types of crimes from occurring with others, because you've been there. To me, the skill, the quality of putting yourself in the position of the other is one of the most undeveloped and most necessary skills that we can have. It's actually the basis of my vegetarianism. I put myself in the position of the other, a battery hen chicken, or a dairy cow, or the pig and the veal calf that's stuck in a crate. If I was one of these creatures, I would hope that those were in a position of power would reject this type of treatment and prevent this type of torture and pain. I wouldn't want to experience that, so therefore I don't want to be involved in contributing to that. And when you start to put yourself in the position of the other, the more accurately, the more genuinely that you can do this, the more I believe we really grow and develop. And if you allow yourself to empathize and genuinely put yourself in the position of the other, it has a profound impact on your actions. And mostly, what you'll find, this is what I believe is following your heart. You know, if you follow your heart, when you think about it, if you follow your heart, I can assure you, what your heart is telling you to do, your mind is saying, that's fucking nuts. What are you talking about? You can't do that. Don't you know what's going to happen if you do that? I can give many examples, but one example would be when I renounced my US citizenship. And I'm not sitting here endorsing like you should go renounce, you know, if you don't do that, you're wrong. Not at all, not at all. It was the right thing for me. But when you make this decision and you tell people around you, nobody says, oh, that's a really good idea, Ken. You should, renounce your US citizenship. That'll be great, you know, really good. Nobody will tell you that, and your mind will be saying, "Are you fucking nuts? You know, you're going to be stateless. What are you going to do? Where are you going to live? You know, there's a million different reasons why I shouldn't." But for me, my heart was simply saying, "You need to remove me from that contract. I do not agree to that contract. I do not agree to paying taxes into your system. I do not agree to voting in your sham elections. I do not agree to your foreign policy on every level. I don't agree with your domestic policy. Take my fucking name off that contract. For my heart's sake, take my fucking name off that contract. I want no part of it." But your head will be saying, you know, a million different reasons why you should just maintain your current position. When you follow your heart, my experience, and I'm not a theorizer about this, I'm a practitioner of it, the blessings that come from genuinely following your heart are so profound, so profound. I am 100% sure that all the blessings that have showered upon me are because I am genuinely motivated by what is in the best interest of everyone, and not just humans. You know, when I walk down the street and I see a snail on the sidewalk, generally what I'll do is I'll pick up the snail and I'll put it into, you know, some vegetation, you know, because it's going to get fucking stepped on. If I see a bee that's flown into a pool, you know, I'll put my hand in there and I'll lift the bee up and I'll take it out and I'll let it fly away so it can live. These things, you know, if there's a spider in the house, you know, find a way to get the spider into the cup, you know, put a piece of paper underneath it and then take the spider and put it outside and let it live. Understanding that if it's an indoor spider, it might have a little problem outside, but nonetheless, at least you've given it a chance. It'll probably find its way back in anyway, so. What a blessing. I mean, when you really think about it, to save a life, even if it's an ant or a bee or whatever it is, a human or a turtle or whatever it is, what a great, great blessing. And when you listen to the sages throughout history, one of the things you find that's really common and ironic because it's the exact opposite of what Southern California stands for. This is my hometown. I know this place and I know the values that are pervasive throughout Southern California. It is the epitome of materialism and superficial bullshit. And I never resonated with that. It was always something strange about it. I couldn't understand how people revolved around these bullshit materialistic fucking pursuits. It never made sense to me. The depth and character and wisdom and philosophy and content of a person was hugely overshadowed by the material wealth, who you know, all this kind of shit. And when you manage to get out of that realm and start to pursue other aspects of life, spiritual awareness and real growth, real seeking of the truth and whatnot, it opens up the door to what I believe is really the key to happiness. And when you really get down to what the sages throughout history have said, happiness is directly proportionate, not to what you can accumulate, which is what we've been taught, what we're conditioned to believe. We go to university, get that job, make that money, buy that home, have that car, get that hot wife, get those kids, white picket fence, and all the things that will make you happy in the end. And yet we have so many filthy rich people who are miserable. They're like schizophrenics. They have multiple personalities. The one in the public eye, the one in their private life, the one with their friends. They're not living who they really are. They're presenting an idea of who they are in order to maintain an illusion which provides them with a kind of fake bullshit, no depth to it, happiness. They don't actually have happiness. To me, the key, and again, the sages have said this throughout history, to happiness is not what you can take or accumulate, but it's what you can give. And the more that you can give, the more that you will understand true happiness. Because actually, what's good for you is good for me. I'm a clever guy. I can articulate. If you took away the tattoos, I was saying to someone earlier, I could be a fucking State Department spokesperson. Can you imagine? I'm pretty good. I could get up there and do that bullshit and get paid pretty well for it. That's part of the reason why I got these tattoos. Again, somebody asked me that just a few moments ago. I made a decision in my 20s, fuck that, I'm never taking that route, I'll never have that opportunity. Put some ink on my face and my neck and, sorry, they're not gonna hire me. I'm not getting the job in the corporate world. It's not gonna be available to me. I've cut it out. And I want so badly for people to understand the beauty of really being who you are. Wherever it is that you work, whoever you mix with, whoever it is in your family, that you can be who you really are. If you have even one day like that, I can assure you it's better than a lifetime of partial, little glimmers of who you really are. This illusion that we maintain, in order to present ourselves in the way that we want other people to perceive us, but they don't really know who we are. With me, it's what you see is what you get. I mean, I do have a private life. I'm not fucking perfect. For those of you who think I might be, the second coming of Christ, or like everything I do, I fucking fart and it smells like roses or whatever. I am a man. I make mistakes like every human being. I'm flawed, like all the rest of us. But I am genuine and I am free, and I'm not afraid to say or do what needs to be done. I have every intention to, I don't believe in death, but pass on with my self-respect. And I made that decision, funny enough, when I was before I awoken, I realized I was like everyone else, as a young Southern Californian, I intended to be a millionaire. That was a goal of mine. Who didn't have that goal, who grew up here? Did anybody not have the goal of making a shitload of money? I see 1, 2, 3, okay, so you get my point. We all fucking plan to make a bunch of money, so did I. And there was this, anybody know Charles Gibbons? Charles Gibbons, a real estate guy? Fucking A, man, nobody knows him. He made a bunch of money in real estate and had a self-help course. And so I took the course, and one of the questions, because I had contemplated this, okay, I want to make money, but I know you can make money if you're ruthless. You don't give a shit about anybody else, prey on people's weakness and exploit that and make money. I mean, I knew, even this was like 18 years old, I knew that, of course, that was one way to make money, but I also knew, like, no way, that's not the way. And one of the questions on this, or one of the exercises in this self-help course was, list top priorities, in sequential order. What is your priority? What is your priorities in life? And I knew immediately, right off the bat, peace of mind. If I have to make money in a way that compromises my peace, no, I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want to fuck somebody over to make money. And that very simple understanding has been a guide for me, although I've made mistakes along the way, many mistakes. I need to feel respect for myself. I really, to me, there's something I'm not willing to sacrifice for any reward. I mean, somebody could offer me trillions of dollars. There's no fucking way that I would sacrifice my self-respect. And I'm not sure exactly how or why I got to that point, but it has blessed me beyond what most can imagine. And I long for that, for people to understand how much joy, how much beauty, how much power you have in being who you really are. Really, who you are. Because I have the kind of faith in humanity to know that contrary to the cynical point of view, we are very amazing creatures. We have a yearning to be free that is very deep, very, very deep. And when people try to oppress us and manipulate us and exploit us, and we have more fear than we have love and strength, we find ourselves in the place we are today. Very compromised. We're not actually being who we truly are. And the world reflects that. This world that we have is insane. It's collectively insane. We are threatening our own existence and have been for many decades now. And probably goes further, but nonetheless, for sure, we know that we've been doing this. And I look at it in a very kind of black and white way in this regard. There is acceptable, which we don't have, and unacceptable, which is what we have. We live with the constant possibility of total self-annihilation. We've managed to produce the types of weapons that allow us to destroy virtually everything, and we're tinkering with genetics, which is even more destructive than nuclear power. We're playing God. We're playing God, tinkering with genetics, and we don't even have a moral, ethical, spiritual plane. It's like down here. That's where we are with our moral, spiritual, ethical plane, and our technology is way up here. This is not sustainable. These two things, they need to be kind of on par. Technology should only go as far as your ethical, spiritual, moral plane. They need to be level. Technology without those things is leading to an almost inevitable self-destructive path, and that's where we've been for a long time. And before I had kids, I felt this way, but I have two boys, two beautiful boys, and I don't feel good about where they're going, and I don't think it's an answer to not have kids. A lot of people, I'll bet there are people in this room who have made a decision to not have kids because this world's so fucked, you don't want to bring kids into this world. And I understand that, I do. I mean, it's very rational in many respects, but I don't believe that's the answer. In fact, I think that in the end it kind of favors the tyranny. It's not that we don't need more children, more kids, more people. We need conscientious kids. We need kids that are not subjected to the kind of indoctrination that probably everybody in this room has been subject to. We need to be able to raise our kids in a way that defies all the conditioning, unschooling, one option, just the ability to nurture and love your kids, allow them to make their mistakes, encourage their explorative, their inquisitive, creative impulses, their artistic impulses, to let them be who they are, to give them the security and the confidence to be able to pursue their real interests, not fucking stick them in some indoctrination program that pumps them full of bullshit and punishes critical thinking. And that was part of what clued me in at a young age, how critical thinking was discouraged and even punished, where it should be encouraged. If we give our kids what we should be giving them, part of my optimism, they are beautiful. Someone asked me this question last night, I believe, and the next generation, or the current younger generation, I mean, they're enamored and intoxicated by a lot of the same bullshit we were, but a lot less than we were. And one thing is for sure, most of the younger generation just are not buying the bullshit like we did. And that in itself is excellent. We bought a lot of that bullshit. I know I did. And they, at a much younger age, are starting to realize this is bullshit, and I don't believe it for a second. It's a hugely positive step in the right direction. The bottom line is that this world is, in its current state, unacceptable by any sane interpretation. We continue to live with the ever-present threat of bastards who are treasonous on any kind of constitutional level, but beyond the U.S., really, these people are treasonous, they're traitors to humanity, they're in positions of public trust, they don't represent our interests, they represent the interests of the bankers who control virtually every aspect of the world that we live in because they have an infinite supply of money, and with that money they have bought everything and everyone that can be bought, and those that can be bought are put in positions of public trust, whereas those who have integrity, wisdom, honor, those people are punished, imprisoned, killed. This is the world we live in. So we've weeded out the best of us. We've allowed the best of us to be weeded out largely, many of them killed and tortured, And we have allowed those that are the most immoral, the most greedy, selfish, and ultimately unrepresentative of the will of people to be put in positions of public trust. The world is completely upside down, and the people who should be in those positions are punished, tortured, and killed, and the people who are the worst positioned are put in those positions of public trust. This is the world we live in. And even with that, part of my optimism is that, look, even with that insane system, which has been in place for a long time now, there is still so much beauty in this world, even though every single ounce of energy that is produced by this fucked up financial system that rewards people financially for avarice, immoral behavior, even with all of that, even with the power, the matrix, the network of power controlled by this financial system, you have so many examples of people around the world standing up, facing power directly, doing what needs to be done, and instituting proactively things that are actually part of the solution, not breaking free from that programming and literally doing what needs to be done. This is despite all of the consequences of being who you are. People in general have a yearning to be free. Someone gave me a necklace that I had years ago, and it had a beautiful saying, very simple and very profound. As birds are meant to fly, so too humans are meant to be free. It is deep within us. When we feel pressured or discouraged or intimidated to be something that we're not, we suffer lots of problems, issues. I believe the seat of depression, the roots of depression are in this. We're not being who we really are. We're doing what we feel we have to do in order to be able to survive in this very fucked up survival of the fittest, dog eat dog, step on your neighbor kind of world that rewards that type of behavior and punishes integrity and honor. We are not being who we are. And when you are who you are, from my experience, I'm not theorizing, one day like that is worth more than a lifetime of compromising who we really are. So this is part of my optimism, is the knowledge that when you get a taste, a real taste of being free, who you really are, it becomes very intoxicating. It pulls you. And the more you taste it, the more you want it. And the tasting of this is a good thing. It translates to good, not just for yourself, but for everyone else. And that is the key to happiness. As I said earlier, all the sages, almost without exception, say the same thing. The key to happiness, all too ironically, especially based on the conditioning of what we find here in Southern California, is that it's not about what you can accumulate, it's about what you can give. The more you can give, the more happiness you will know. Ironic, really. So, I have something to give. It's something that I've thought about for many years. And it's a reflection of my greatest goal. A goal that I'm not attached to, part of the wisdom that I've managed in my 46 years. All I know for sure is that if you do your best, your heart is pure and you do your best, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. If you feel something, believe in something, and you don't give your best, your fear overcomes your love, your weakness overcomes your strength, that's the seed of regret. I wish I had done that. Damn it, and when you have love presented to you, and your fear of it's a mistake, or shit, people will say this, or people will say that, and you allow the possibility of love to escape you, that's the seed of potential regret. Whatever your heart, whatever your heart tells you to do, no matter how crazy it seems, when you follow it, it has a profound impact. And from my experiences, the reason for the blessings I have, like a room like this. You know, so many of you shower me with incredible praise. It's very humbling and not something that I take lightly. You know, I really genuinely appreciate and love the kinds of blessings that you all offer to me. But getting back to my biggest goal that I'm not attached to, I will do my best, is this desire to see a better world. My need to do my best to hand over this world to not only my children, but to your children and future generations in a way that I can feel good about. And the way it is right now, I do not feel good about it. I feel like we have failed at this point to ensure that our children have a future. In America, we've pissed away the US Constitution. It's not a perfect document, but it's a hell of a fucking sight better than what we have now. And some people in the past fought for something, and you know, there's all sorts of nuances in the history, and you know, blah blah blah. There's a lot to it, but at the end of the day, the U.S. Constitution, Declaration of Independence, really beautiful things, and we pissed it away like spoilt brats who never appreciated all the blessings. We pissed it right away. We used it as toilet paper and literally flushed it down the fucking toilet. And this is what we give our children. It's not something that we can feel proud about. So I want to feel good about at least doing my best. And my biggest goal is a better world. Something that we can feel good about handing to our children. And I've thought about this for many, many, many years. I've, tried to analyze how could you possibly affect a better world? How? What do you do exactly? One of the things that you hear from people regularly is, we need to unite. That's true. I said this last night. How many of you were here last night? I don't want to be completely redundant. Well, thank you to coming back, and forgive me for repeating just slightly what I said last night, but it's relevant for those who weren't here. Remember the Occupy movement, and we all, I'm sure, remember the Occupy movement. There seemed to be some real potential there for a while. But one of the things that I believe, killed the real power potential of the so-called Occupy movement is that there was this constant reference to the 99%. And if you're going to refer to the 99% and try and reflect the interests of the 99%, the amount of things that you can say that actually are endorsed by the 99% is very small, very narrow, very narrow. Whatever, name, an ideology, anarchism, or, anarcho-syndicalism, whatever, socialism, capitalism, whatever, democracy, theocracy, whatever the hell it is you believe in, all of these things are not uniformly accepted. They're not. They're very divisive, and purposely so. The powers that be have polarized, they have manipulated us and polarized our attitudes about this. So if you speak about these things, you really are taking a very arrogant position to suggest that this is representative of the 99%. So looking at this, understanding these types of things, what could possibly represent the so-called 99%? I mean, what? What is it that the vast majority of us, 99% of us, could realistically agree to? And when you think about that, not a whole lot. Not a whole lot, to be honest. Not a whole lot at all. But I'll put three things that I believe in this very manipulated, collectively insane world, you're not going to get 99%, but you can get a very high percentage. Three things that have the capacity to unite humanity. And when I tell people this, I have to say I chuckle inside, because I believe, and I could be wrong, maybe I'm just wrong, maybe I'm just delusional, maybe I'm just delusions of grandeur in terms of the idea and whatnot. I don't believe so at all, but nonetheless, there is so much power in this potential idea. There's three things that I'm going to be presenting, I have presented, but there's a lot more to the overall strategy. For those of you who've been following what I've been putting forward in terms of the world citizen solutions, we haven't actually identified the strategy. And believe you me, when I initiated this back in December, I knew the challenge of presenting a plan and requesting money. We asked for $79,000. At this point, we've gotten like 115 grand so far. Asking people to give financially to a plan that you're not actually revealing the details to, I always understood to be a little bit challenging, and I never would have taken any exception to people saying, well, I'm sorry, you didn't give us enough, so I'm not going to support it, and you didn't get the money. And I always told the team, Sam is here, or Lou is here, that we all understood. If we didn't get the money, like if we got 60 grand or 50 grand or whatever, we would have given it all back. Because the minimum that we needed was 79 grand. Thankfully, we've got a bit more. It gives a bit of a cushion. You always want reserve capital. You want, unexpected expenses. You want that shit covered. And the team understood and respected that, and we got the money. And that's the basic amount of money that we needed to be able to execute this plan in a way that actually fulfills its potential. So we have the money. Now we move into the phase of putting it forward. But at the core of this strategy, there is a lot more to it, and I promise you, when it's all revealed, it will be good. And it will be revealed in one of two circumstances. One, we do everything that we need to do to present this plan, everything about it done properly, all the things that need to be in place in terms of staff and receiving the kind of interest that I know it will get. When those things are in place, we will launch. I hope 3 months, 4 months, we'll see. The only other way it will happen is if something happens to me and I'm either in prison or I've been killed or whatever. I've already made the video, it's there, from the grave. Here's what it was that I thought we could do, and I hope that this gift is received, but hey, my brothers and sisters in human form, that's up to you. I believe the thing that we can unite behind, and again, I kind of chuckle at people not fully kind of comprehending what the power of this is three things. One, I am a man, in my case, you may be a woman. I am a man, and I affirm my rights, my natural rights. The right to life, the right to liberty, the right to travel, the right to be free, to express myself, the right to live free of oppression. This is basic. Is there any way that anyone who is sane could object to this thing, to affirm my natural rights? This is the kind of thing that has the potential to unite us. I affirm my natural rights, number one. Number two, I obligate myself to respecting your rights and everyone else's natural rights. It is basically, is the brother here from last night, the golden rule? There he is, yeah, thank you. It's the golden rule. It's the most simple, basic thing. And if you don't understand the golden rule, something is wrong with you. Something is wrong with you. What is good for you is good for me. Something that's bad for you is bad for me. Because we are, despite the kind of false bullshit sort of we are one's shit that's out there, in truth we are one. We have a common fate. We are brothers and sisters in a human family, whether we like it or not. And there is no way to exploit your brother or sister and truly gain, no matter what material, physical, whatever favor you've gained by the exploitation and abuse of your brother or sister, you have not gained at all. In fact, you've harmed yourself, because you are part of that which you have just stolen from. You have stolen from yourself. You have harmed yourself. And if you're a spiritually aware being like I am, you've harmed your spiritual development. You have not benefited your spiritual growth and development at all. This is a very basic concept. All of us can understand the principle of do unto others. It is an obvious way for us to take a very revolutionary path in the most unantagonistic way, to agree to respect each other and protect each other's natural rights. Those are the first two things. The third element, we live on planet Earth. This planet sustains us. This planet is like a mother. We should respect it as a mother. We shouldn't be shitting on our mother. This place provides life to all of us. And we do have the capacity, especially with things like genetic engineering playing God, we have the capacity, nuclear power and weapons, we have the capacity to turn this place into an inferno. And we are largely destroying life in so many ways that it is beyond tragic, and it is insane, self-destructive. It is about as stupid as you get. I think the vast majority of people around the world can understand the need to respect our planet as our home, as our host, as our mother. These three things, as simple as it sounds, have the capacity to unite us, because nobody in their right mind could object to any of these things. I mean, really. The state will object to it. Of course they will. The state is inherently involved in stripping you of your natural rights. But the rest of us have the capacity to understand the benefit to both our community and to ourselves by respecting each other's rights. There is within this idea the capacity to unite people. We look at the planet, the population, roughly over 7 billion at this point. How many people on this planet do you reckon are not happy with the current state of affairs? How many people do you reckon see this never-ending cycle of war, especially in countries that are war-torn? How many of us do you reckon see this as nonsensical, destructive, unhelpful, detrimental, and potentially suicidal for humanity? How many people do you reckon are happy with the current state of affairs, feel like they're represented by their so-called democratic governments? How many people do you feel are disenfranchised with the current situation, who know that the politicians do not represent them, who are very disquieted and unhappy with the state of affairs? I think the number of people who fit into the latter category is in, at the very minimum, hundreds of millions. Hundreds of millions, if not billions. I think it's actually in the billions. Billions of people around the world know, subconsciously and consciously, like, this is not cool. What we are doing is not cool. And it could lead to the end of the world as we know it. We have been flirting with a third world war for a long time now. Something needs to change. How do we change that? I believe it starts with these three things. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is just like some sort of delusional dream. But if it's true that we need to unite, I'd like to hear from any of you. There's going to be a question period, or present it. If you think there are some things that could be more uniting than these three things, or could complement these three things, please present it. I've thought about this for years. Present it. If it's truly uniting, if it's the kind of thing that across the spectrum people can agree, yes, this is a good thing, well, then it potentially could be added. But for me, that's the starting point. What do we actually agree on? Now, in terms of these three things, the power is in the numbers. So the real challenge, from my perspective, is packaging. People, you know, you look at the mainstream media, it's pretty awesome, I have to say. What the mainstream media has is 100% pure grade, nasty ass, stinky fucking bullshit. That's their product. But it's packaged so incredibly. Everyone looks so perfect. They're like flawless. No blemishes on the skin. Their articulation is just right. All of the lighting is perfect. The backdrop looks great. Everything is just incredible. It looks so great. But inside the package is bullshit. It's just pure bullshit. But it's packaged so well. Imagine having gold, just real, beautiful wisdom and value, something so profound, something so genuinely, deeply beneficial to everyone, something beautiful. If it takes like hours and hours to understand it and like some deep kind of investment to really get at the core of it, it just won't go anywhere. But if you can take pure gold, beautiful wisdom, profoundly beneficial packaged product and put it in a way that's like the mainstream, that looks like what they would do, that visually, acoustically, in every way looks appealing, and it actually has the depth behind it, that has massive power. That's the kind of thing that can spread very fast in this world. In fact, it could permeate cultures and countries around the world within a week or two, literally. It has the potential, if it's presented the right way and is simple enough for everyone to be able to understand. For me, that's the real challenge. If this is presented the right way, it has the capacity to spread. And if the numbers get where I know they will need to go in order to truly provide that basis of power, effectively taking that power back, whether we know it or not, we've given our power to those who are ruling the world right now. They have nothing but which we have given them. Make no mistake about it, they have not a fucking thing. They only have what we've given them. If we take that back by simply saying, I am a man, I am affirming my rights, I am not sacrificing my rights, any contract that I had been entered into, generally at birth as a citizen, because that's the initial contract, and under that contract you've been stripped of your natural rights. From the very beginning, the system was set up to strip you of your your natural rights. If this idea is successful, it's going to grow very quickly. And the capacity of us to actually change the world and be the change that we wish to see in the world is going to manifest, I believe, in 2016. But either way, I could be wrong. There is a lot more strategy to it, as I said, but this is kind of the core of it. And if we are successful, we're going to have a world that most people, they won't even recognize. It's going to be beautiful. If we fail, and I believe this generation is the one that will decide that, if we fail, we have very distinctly the possibility of turning this place into an inferno and leaving our children nothing, even if we don't have an all-out nuclear war, leaving a world that is so draconian, so completely oppressive, tyrannical, that our children will have nothing but a shadow of freedom that we gave to them. I would rather fucking die, even though I don't believe in death, I would rather die than be party to that. And when enough of us feel that way, trust me, game, set, match, check, fucking mate, done, deal. We have the power. Okay. Gaza, people want to hear about Gaza?
Yeah.
Emphatic. Well, I've lived in Gaza. Lived there for 6 months in 2011. I've been there several times. I was given honorary Palestinian citizenship in 2008, something that I really take as a great, great honor. My experience in Gaza has been one of the great enriching, blessing experiences of my life. You cannot help but grow as a person and actually develop a sort of optimism about humanity when you witness people who are dealing with such incredible, oppressive reality and yet carry themselves with so much dignity. Really, in the most undignified of situations where the most basic needs are stripped from you. When you go to Palestine, it's very similar actually to Hawaii, funny enough. The Hawaiian people are noteworthy for their hospitality and generosity. Their basic mentality is that if you come and visit our land, we will share everything that we have. It was sort of their undoing. It was us motherfuckers who came to their country, exploited this goodwill, and fucking took and stole from them. The Palestinians have the same kind of mentality. Again, having lived in Gaza and also for a period in the West Bank, it is remarkable how much the Palestinian people take you under their wing. If you are in their land, they have like this deeply embedded responsibility to look after you. And despite the fact that they're dealing with such a horrendous reality, including nasty, nasty, nasty financing of their oppression by the United States, you know, me as an ex-Marine, and you know, I'm an American-born son, and yet I've been treated with great love. I've heard over and over and over again in Palestine, in Iran, around the Middle East, around the world, from Palestinians, we do not have a problem with the American people, but your government, yes, we have a real problem with them. We like the Americans, you know, I've heard this over and over and over again. I find this to be truly fascinating. Think about it. If the situation were reversed, and America was similar to Palestine in terms of the reality that we're dealing with, and that we were being occupied in the most oppressive, supremacist kind of way, how do you think we would feel about people who were financing that? Do you think we would be as sort of tolerant and forgiving of those people who come from the nations that are literally financing what we do? Or do you think a lot of Americans would be very hateful, bitter, and very unwelcoming to anyone who comes from that area, unable to distinguish between the good people from those places and those who simply come from those places? When you travel to a place like Palestine, you see how amazingly forgiving, accepting, and generous and hospitable people can be, despite the fact that you come from a land which is the direct oppressor of them, the financier of the oppression of them. It cannot help but humble you and give you real faith in humanity, because even though people are enduring the most insane, horrendous realities in places like Gaza, there is this amazing quality, generosity, hospitality, compassion, forgiveness, that still lives within so many of us. If you go, how many of you have been to Palestine, by the way? So maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 of you, something like that. If you go, believe me, you'll be humbled. It is inspiring. What I see in Gaza, however, is also a stain on the conscience of humanity. We have allowed a population of people, by our own financing, to be collectively punished. In truth, people I think I heard you refer to it as a prison camp. That's not really correct from my perspective. It is a concentration camp. Literally, because in a prison camp, generally, if you're in prison, then you will get 3 square meals, you'll get medical attention, you know, you'll have these things generally in a prison. In a concentration camp, and you will also have committed supposedly a crime. In Gaza, your crime is being Palestinian. That's it. So, like the Jews and the Gypsies and whatnot, that's your crime. There you go. That's where you go. So it is much more a concentration camp than it is a prison camp. And we are financing this concentration camp. And we are allowing, at this point now, 900,000 plus children to be subjected to, basically they're being stripped of their childhood. They're not allowed to be children. At the youngest age, they are stripped of their ability to just play and be what children are, and to accept the responsibilities of an adult mentality, a survival mentality in a war-type zone. This is what we've done to the children of Gaza and many around the world. And yet, as I've said, the hospitality, generosity, compassion, understanding is stark and beautiful and inspiring. I mean, I could go.
And those of you who follow Ken have seen that he participated in the Mavi Marmara flotilla, the Gaza flotilla, 6 ships, May of 2010. Ken was on board that ship when 9 people were killed, 1 subsequently died. 6, according to the UN report, received extra judicial assassination by the Israeli commandos. Could you briefly describe that experience for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, so briefly, we set out towards Gaza. You know, this was a ship with about 700-800 people on it, the Mavi Marmara. And this was 2010. This actually was probably the top news story, at least for a day or so. It was big news story. I had done something like this before. I was on the first Free Gaza mission in 2008. We sailed from Cyprus with 2 boats, and we managed to sail into Gaza. That was the first time that had happened in 41 years. Nobody had sailed into Gaza from international waters for 41 years, and we did it in 2008. Amazing experience. When we sailed into the harbor in Gaza, there were thousands and thousands of children. Most of the Palestinians didn't think we had a chance in hell, but those who thought we did and were there, who received us, I mean, kids were jumping into the water, just swimming all around the boat. There were boats coming out, greeting us. People, it was a real moment of euphoria, which sadly didn't translate to the kind of justice that you really want. But there was a glimmer of hope there for a bit. So I had actually been involved in something successful. And when I decided at the last moment to be part of the Freedom Flotilla, the Mavi Marmara, that was accompanied by many other boats from nations around the world. It was, I don't know, 6 or 7 of it. But that was a ship, that was a proper ship, run by the Turks. And I was on that ship, and while we were on that ship, when we were sailing out of Cyprus on our way to Gaza, one of the Turkish brothers came up to me and said, "Listen, would you like?" I had a camera and whatnot. "Would you like to document the event, or would you like to be part of defending the ship?" And because there were so many journalists and so many camera people and whatnot, and I do have a background that makes it possible for me to actually be part of defending, I said yes, I'd be honored to be part of the defense. So I'm pretty sure I did not see, there was about maybe, out of 700 people, there was about maybe 200 men, roughly, who were involved in the defense of the ship, and I don't recall any other white people. I think I was the only white guy who was involved in that. A real honor to even be invited, to have that kind of level of trust. And each of us were put in basically 6-person teams, and I was put in a team that had responsibility over the aft, the stern of the ship, the back of the ship, on a certain deck. And I was actually put in second in command. There was a Turkish man who was like the leader of this 6-person team, and I was second. So if something happened to him, I would have been in charge. Again, a great, great honor. I believed that we would get through. I believed that we were going to sail into Gaza. Because I had been on the boats that had successfully sailed in 2008, I thought that the Israelis would not be so stupid as to attack a ship like this with that many people, lots of media. Al Jazeera was there, Press TV was there. There were none of the mainstream, none of the American bastard prostitutes were there, but nonetheless, the rest were legit. Well, Al Jazeera's fucked as well, but nonetheless, there was some pretty big international news agencies there. I didn't think the Israelis would be so stupid as to do what they did. I was wrong. And so I was on the aft portion of the ship in the 6-person team, but there were teams positioned all around the ship, including the top deck, which is where the majority of violence occurred. And the Israelis, they attacked right during the morning prayers. There was no doubt about them choosing that time. This is when the Muslims were praying. Boom, that is when they made their attack. And they started with their zodiacs, and they came up to the sides of the boat and tried to throw grappling hooks and ladders to be able to get up the sides, but it wasn't working. It did not work at all. Those of us who were in those areas, we were either getting the grappling hooks and throwing them back in the water, or repelling them with throwing objects at them, and they were not successful in getting on board the ship that way. But then the helicopter came, the first helicopter, and started hovering over the top deck. And I remember being on the back of the ship and looking at that, and they were basically doing what I've done, as a Marine. They were fast roping. They weren't rappelling, they were fast roping. If you've never done it before, it's like a thick rope, and what you do is, it's the fastest way to get from an elevation down to the ground, because you're not actually connected. The only thing that connects you is your hands with gloves and your feet, and you wrap your feet around the bottom of the rope and your hands around the top, and you grab it and you slide down, and once you get to the bottom, boom, you're off. No, nothing to disconnect. And I saw them come, and they threw the first rope came down. It was really quite entertaining, actually. The first rope came down, and some of the brothers up at the top took the rope and they fucking ran over here with it, and they wrapped it around something, so it was like sideways, And it was like, you're not rappelling down that. You're gonna fucking drop right down to the deck and kill yourself. And also the helicopter was attached to the fucking rope, which is now attached to the ship, which could cause a real big problem. If there's any kind of tension there, that the ship's going to win, the fucking helicopter's going to get... So it was a problem, and they had to release the first rope from up top. They released the first rope, they sacrificed that rope, but they kept coming. And they managed to get a rope down, and again, I was at the back of the ship, and I saw the rope come down, and I saw the first commandos come down, and I knew, like, fuck, that's a problem. You know, they're gonna get a lot of people who are heavily armed on the ship. And so I asked the guy who was in charge of the 6-person team, I said, listen, can I go up top? And he said, yes, go ahead. And I started to go up to the top of the ship, and you know, it's like, I don't know, the way it played out was uncanny. I got up to the deck below the top deck and was getting ready to go into the area where you could go up to the top deck. And when I got to the hatch where you enter the area where you could go up to the top, an Israeli commando was pushed over the top deck and fell literally right in front of me, right there. And as he fell, I saw, you know, he had a 9mm pistol holstered. Immediately, I went after that pistol. As it turns out, there was a reporter, a journalist from Press TV, who was filming this. He told me later he was filming this. And so he has footage of me basically getting down to the ground and taking that 9mm pistol. Another brother came, and I took the pistol, and he grabbed this guy. This guy, this first commando, he was pretty traumatized. He was, you know, he was there, but he wasn't fully there. It was the easiest thing in the world. I'm not going to make it out like I pulled some fucking great kung fu move, and, you know, it was pretty simple. Priority, get that fucking weapon off that guy. And I got the weapon off of him. He was pulled inside, and I didn't know what to do with this weapon. You know, it had been said that we could throw it. Am I going way too far with this, or is this okay? So I had this weapon, and it had been said that you could throw the weapon into the sea, but I was like, no, bullshit, this is evidence. We have to keep this weapon. Because I still believed at that point that we had the potential to get away. Fuck you, we're gonna fucking make it. And so I had this weapon. I held it in a safe position across my chest, part of my Marine Corps training. And I was walking around the ship, like, trying to figure out where to take the weapon. I was asking some of the Turkish brothers, like, you know, where can we put this? I even went up to the bridge where the captain was. I went up to the bridge, and I have to laugh at this, you know, I went up to the bridge, and I peeked in, and there's the captain, and I said, listen, I've got this weapon, you know, is there somewhere to put it? He said, get the fucking thing out of here. Because he knew, if there's a weapon scene in here, and they come in, they're gonna fucking shoot me dead, you know, heartbeat. So, okay, yeah, sorry. I left the bridge, and I started moving down the back of the ship, and it was at that point I actually had a couple bullets, and I've heard bullets, I know what they sound like when they fly by. Unnerving, by the way. When you have the bullet fly by, you hear that, you know, there's a sound, it's unnerving, to say the least. And I realized that at a certain point, fucking name, man, this is nuts. They've got snipers, they've got laser fucking guided rifles. I'm running around with a weapon in my hand, and I've just heard a couple of bullets fucking ricochet by me, and that was when I actually got into Marine mode and like got down low to the ground and started being really aware of where I was moving. Eventually what I decided was to take the bullets out of the weapon. So I did. I ejected the bullets out of the weapon. I took the bullets and I gave them to a man named Ismail Patel, gave him the bullets, and then I took the weapon and I hid it somewhere on the ship in the hopes that it would be used as evidence against them. Once I was done with that, I decided, you know, I wanted to go back up to the top. I knew the top of the ship was where shit was happening. And I went back to the other side of the ship, and I went to almost exactly the same spot I was when I encountered the first Israeli commando, and I shit you not, almost in exactly the same position, another Israeli commando was pushed over the top deck and fell right in front of me. You could hardly script it. This one was more alert. He was definitely alert, and he had a submachine gun shouldered across his abdomen. And he was on the ground, and he was fucking working, like he was getting to his weapon. And I saw that he was doing that, and I got down to him, and I grabbed his hands. His hands were like getting to the trigger, and I grabbed his hand and was pulling on his hands, pulled his hands off of the weapon, and another brother came and pulled the weapon off his shoulder, took the weapon. I believe he threw it into the sea. And this commando was also taken, totally disarmed. So I was involved in disarming 2 of 3 commandos. There was a third one who was also disarmed. We had possession of 3 of their best. These are like the Navy SEALs, you know, the top of the top, the best of the best for the Israelis. And we had 3 of them. And they were taken inside the bowels of the ship and they were surrounded by 50, 100 men. They were ours. You know, we could have done anything with them. And there were people on that ship Palestinians who lost loved ones to these people, Israeli Defense Forces. There were some there that, if they could have, I'm sure, they would have fucking taken them right out. But overwhelmingly, the opinion was, and it was the end result was, they were taken care of. They were even given medical attention. Some of them had been beaten up a bit, nothing serious, but you know, they were given medical attention and they were isolated. And eventually, the decision came down from the leader of the organization that had bought the ship to let them go, and we let them go. We took them to the bow of the ship and allowed them basically to jump off. 2 of them jumped off. The first one that I was involved, he was still in a state of shock, and he didn't even have the strength to jump off. So eventually the Israelis got to the bow and they got him there. One of the things I did when we got these 3 commandos, and we were given the order to stop defending the ship. It was said, okay, enough, stop defending the ship. They've taken control of the bridge. There's really no chance that we're going to make it to Gaza. It's time to stop. And so everybody followed that directive. But I went down into the bowels of the ship and I made a point of going to these 3 commandos and like getting right in front of them and looking right into their eyes. I really wanted to like look into them, look into their soul and see, who are you exactly? What the fuck are you doing here? And I swear what I saw was little frightened children, little boys, like victims of an abusive father or something. There was no bravado, no fucking strength and courage, and all of that shit melted right away, because in truth there is no depth to where you're coming from. Everything you believe in is a lie. You are the oppressive force, screwing over other people who did no harm to you and have given you multiple opportunities to show some semblance of humanity, and you've chosen not to. And right now you know this because you believe you're going to die, because they were looking at us like we were going to do to them what they did to us. And as you said, of the 9 people that were murdered that day, another man was put into a coma from his injuries. He succumbed years later. So technically it's 10 people were murdered by the Israelis, and 6 of them, I've actually read the autopsy ballistic reports, I've looked at them, 6 of them were executed, flat out. Bullet to the back or to the head, back of the head in most cases, at point blank range. That means tattooing, the muzzle flash, the fire that comes out of the weapon, you could see the tattooing from that. That means it's at close range. And also you can tell that injuries were already in place. These people were on the ground, generally on their back or on their stomach, and they were executed. One of them, by the way, was an American citizen. How many people know of the American citizen that was murdered on that ship? Yeah, exactly. That's how it's meant to be. His name is Furkan Doğan, 19-year-old kid of Turkish descent. Not an American-sounding name. Bummer. Wish his name was like John Adams or some shit like that. People would have paid more attention. It's Furkan Doğan. And this 19-year-old kid, which I did have a little exchange with him on the ship. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to know him better, but we did have a little exchange. I have a feeling he knew a little bit about who I was as well. He seemed to kind of look at me in a way that was kind of admiring. And what little time I had with this young man was, he clearly was a bright light. This is a good kid. Good kid. He was actually accepted in medical school and was meant to go to medical school in the States later in the summer. This was in summer. He was meant to go to medical school later that year. And this kid had been shot. He was shot 5 times. The first shots, the first 4 shots, were at distance. He was most likely shot by a sniper from one of the helicopters. We can tell again by ballistics how far, what's the range distance, you know, we can tell a lot from accurate ballistics. And these first 4 shots were at distance. One shot came through the back, went through his lungs, his left lung, and shattered a couple of ribs. Another one actually hit his head Didn't kill him. It wasn't a kill shot, but it went through his head and came out around the back of the ear. Another one was in the shin and another one in the foot. He was on the ground with 4 bullet wounds in him, but still alive, and there were eyewitness reports to the fact that he was still alive. He was on his back, and the last shot was point-blank range to his face, just underneath the right eye. That was the bullet wound with the tattooing, so he was executed. Flat out executed. This young kid was like a really bright light, and you know nothing about any of this because the US government has completely covered it up. And you know, when we do human rights reports about every country, if an American citizen is killed by another nation, it's entered into that report. Well, you will not find Firkin Doan's name in the human rights reports about Israel in that year. Whitewashed, removed.
What year was it?
2010. Amazing, amazing reality that none of us, for the most part, know about. And that ship and what we did that morning was like one of the greatest honors and blessings that I've been involved in. Everyone, even before the attack, but certainly during the attack, everyone just kind of did what needed to be done. And what I really love about it is that while almost all Western activism revolves around passive, so-called passive resistance, you know, if we confront the enemy, we will be passive. We will, okay, we're not going to do anything. We don't agree with what you're doing, but we're not going to resist it. This was active resistance, yet with nonviolent force. We could have killed at least 3 of their people. It would have been the easiest thing in the world to do. Quite frankly, we had complete control over them. We didn't choose to kill them. We chose to subdue and disarm those who were coming to kill us. And we not only risked lives, we lost lives in active defense against an oppressor, a violator, a criminal. I really respect that. That takes balls, man. Passive resistance has its place, but active resistance also has its place. And when you actively resist and refuse to become the killer that your oppressor is, there's a real moral authority to that. And the people who were on that ship, as far as I'm concerned, carried themselves with enormous dignity. And what we did, despite the fact that it has not translated so sadly to anything really meaningful for the people of Gaza, we did what needed to be done. And we did it with honor and integrity. And it was a great, great, great blessing to be there. There are many other side stories to that experience, but that's sort of the short version, which wasn't completely short. But it was an amazing historical moment to be involved in, a great honor to be involved in.
Right. Ken, let me just wish you my heartfelt thanks. I always want to do this personally for your dedication to the Palestinian cause. Very impressive.
Feeling that they have to do with the 22 veterans a day we lose by recognizing the emptiness and the atrocities that they have been made to commit.
With regard to the Israeli commandos and the way that they look, I think it's undeniable that they realized for the first time in their lives all the indoctrination melted away, and now they were dealing with the reality of their life being taken from them, and for what? If you are involved in defense or war for your nation and your cause is just, there is no PTSD. There's a great documentary that was done on Russia Today not long ago, and it showed these Vietnam veterans who needed to go back to Vietnam to sort of purge themselves of the guilt. And there was a classic scene where they had this Viet Cong veteran who had been through 3 wars, World War II, the French occupation of Vietnam, and the American occupation of Vietnam. And these Americans are just like breaking down and crying, and, just the enormous guilt and all this stuff. And one of them said to this Viet Cong guy, who just looked like the most sort of placid, content, at peace with himself, Vietnamese man, and they asked, do you suffer from any of this PTSD and whatnot? And he kind of smiled and said, why? I was defending my nation. You would never want to kill. It's not something a sane person wants to do, to kill somebody. But if you're going to come into my nation of course based on false premises and try and justify your fucking rape and plunder, well, I will kill you. And I will do so with a clean conscience. And, you know, I could completely relate and understand. It's exactly what I would do. I mean, what would any of us men do if someone was invading our country and killing our people and threatening our families? Would you be a coward and, you know, fucking allow them to? No. You kill, quite frankly. And you kill with total justification. The difference between the Israelis and us was that they came to realize that their killing was not justified at all. In fact, they were the side of wrong, of tyranny. And it did. It was exposed in them in that moment. What I see, actually, I agree with the CIA and Henry Kissinger, actually. How do you reckon? The CIA said, I think it was 2000, I don't know, 10, 11, something like that. The CIA said that Israel would be no more within 20 years. Look it up. And Henry Kissinger actually said in the last few years that Israel will be no more in 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. I wholeheartedly agree. Israel is living on borrowed time. The thing that was required for Israel to exist was for it to be in the dark. It's like the vampire. The vampire cannot go out in the sunlight. The vampire will be no more if it's exposed to the light. Israel has been allowed to continue because it's been in the dark, purposely so. The whole system has been set up to protect it from the light, and that light is now being exposed. It's exposing Israel for what it is. If you ask me, Israel is living on borrowed time, and the only chance it has is something akin to a Third World War, full-scale Third World War, in which, you know, all of our freedoms will have to be sacrificed in order to secure the realm. And that's the goal. That's what they want to do. And it's possible that they may achieve that goal, and it's possible that greater Israel could become a reality, and that Israel will expand into Lebanon and Syria and Iraq and Jordan and Saudi and Egypt and become the seat of the next empire. It is conceivable that that would happen, but I don't believe that it will achieve that goal at all. I believe the opposite. The only real question I have is, will we experience the so-called Samson option? I asked this last night. How many people here know what the Samson option is? Right. So just quickly, the Samson option is basically a position that many very powerful, influential thinkers and leaders in Israel have adopted. That goes back to a biblical story about Samson, who was overwhelmed by the enemy and ultimately knew that he was going to die. So what he did was he pushed over the pillars of the temple while all of his enemies came and basically killed all the enemies along with himself. It's in the modern era, in the nuclear era, in Israel with 200 to 400 nuclear weapons. If Israel's existence is threatened, it will use its nuclear power to exterminate the world. The Samson option. If we're going out, we're going to take all you with us. Which, you know, we should all know this. That's kind of relevant. Why is Iran the problem when Israel is saying this? It's beyond ridiculous. So I believe that despite the many cynical views out there, that we will have this. There's one thing that I didn't say it last night. I was not planning on staying in California that long. I was going to go back pretty quickly, but I have to say, for those of you who don't know, you know, I had an experience with TSA, you know, Homeland Security, and they tried to stick me in their little fucking radiation chamber in order for me to fly, and I can't do that. That's my red line. I'm not doing that. I've got a flight back to London, you know, in a little over a week, week and a half. I've got a flight to Hawaii. It looks like I'm going to sacrifice that flight to Hawaii. I had business, but if they're insisting that I get in that fucking box, I'm not doing it. So I'm not even going to be able to go to Hawaii. And my flight from Los Angeles to London, I can't see using that either as it stands. And because they've done this to me, these types of things really fire me up. Like, okay, well, fuck you. If you're going to do that to me. So what I've been contemplating, and I'm looking to see how much support and, you know, inspiration you might have from this idea. I've been entertaining the idea of a fuck the traitors and TSA tour in that name. Fuck the traitors in the TSA tour, and taking Amtrak, no, and so Because really, I feel like, I did not make this engagement. They've engaged me. It brings me back to 1990, 91 as a Marine when they injected us with experimental drugs and ordered us to take experimental pills. And many of the 600,000 plus American sons and daughters, and British sons and daughters, by the way, the only two military forces that had so-called Gulf War syndrome, it was from these experimental fucking drugs, which we were ordered to take. And I'll be fucking damned if you order me into your bullshit experiment fucking radiation crap again. That's my red line.
So we have one last quick question.
Just in finishing quickly. If you know people around Western states, if you think this might be a good idea and you would like to support it in any meaningful way, please come up to me or to Samantha right here and let's make it happen. I have a feeling much good will come from it. And again, I did not plan this, but I feel the inspiration to say, okay, you want to engage me that way? Well, fine, I'll fucking engage you.
We're almost out of time, but considering the 9/11 Truth Group organized this and sort of sponsored it, could you give us your take on 9/11? Surely you don't believe the official conspiracy theory promoted by the government media.
Yeah, very quickly. I mean, I think we're so far beyond that now. It's not even about, I don't even agree with a new investigation. By who? We've already had our investigation. I don't want another fucking investigation of the fox who's guarding the hen house. I don't give a fuck about that. There's enough in the public realm to already know whose fingerprints are all over the event. And for me, the litmus test of any so-called truth teller is your position on 9/11. And we're beyond a false flag. It's not just a false flag. We can identify. We know foreknowledge, not disputable. Foreknowledge of Mossad, agents there, admitted to it. This is not disputable. It's in there. So Israeli Mossad most definitely had knowledge of this. We also have shitloads of evidence. Larry Silverstein, Frank Lowy, buying the fucking lease on these asbestos-ridden liabilities. There's no fucking way. If their name was Mohammed and fucking Abdul and they were Muslims and did that shit, everyone would know. Not only that, but they fucking collected billions on the insurance policy that they doubled. The Israeli Jewish supremacist Mossad fucking connection is in the public realm. So if you're going to speak honestly about 9/11, for me, integrity requires that you identify that. And the traitors within the US government, many of them, some of them dual nationals, but many traitors. And it's there. So, I mean, yeah, I could go into a lot more with 9/11, but we're at the end, but that's the basic crux.
So, we're at the end of the program. Let's give a round of applause. Come up here. Come up here.